He'll catch up.
Oh,
he
there
usually
we go.
does.
I got the thumbs up. Well, good morning.
Good morning.
I know that you're all glad to be back in this room to have one final kitchen table. Before we get to the kitchen table conversation, we need to say a big thank you to the South Carolina Society of Fire Service Instructors for breakfast. Never let it be said. Never let it be said that a challenge will not be viewed as an opportunity when something happens around here. Another example of that in action occurred this morning. And by the way, David Griffith says, make sure you take a biscuit in your pocket when you leave. Feel free. There's plenty of biscuits out there. So take one for the road trip home.
Please.
I was talking with Chief Brunacini this morning on the ride over, and we were talking about good news. We needed a little, I said, you know that old Anne Murray song? Sure could use a little good news today. He was chuckling. He said, well, what in the world? You got me sitting up there talking about the future. Right? Is that how you say?
I don't even buy green bananas.
But I think that's where we come full circle to. We've had an awesome weekend of learning more together. Watching the interaction and the networking, the classrooms, the kitchen table dialogue that has occurred, listening to you all talk as you process that information, you've got some good news going on in the state of South Carolina. So it's going to be fun to kind of switch gears and get some conversation going around what does the future hold, the future of the fire service for South Carolina. As I said when we kicked this off, you really are a leader, and other states are looking at you and saying, we want to do it like they're doing it in South Carolina. So I think the history part of this weekend with the South Carolina Fire Service Improvement Conference home run, and I must say again, thank you to everyone, all the staff that have worked behind the scenes to make this work so smooth, because it's a great team, and all of the association had folks on deck. Make sure also as you're leaving that you stop by that back table. There's lots of flyers that have upcoming dates, and we did just want to very quickly remind you of some of those. I guess the first one up is the Common Voices Fire Safety Day, which will be Thursday, January 23rd. That information is on this upcoming dates to remember. The Kill the Flashover is February 10th through 14th. We have the Southeastern Fire School, March 8th and 9th. Don't forget to mark your calendars for South Carolina's Fire Rescue 2014. That's June 9th through 14th in Myrtle Beach. Spartanburg Burns, May 15, 16, 17, and 19, 20, 21. So there's lots going on. There's a lot of things in the future here.
And for the Southeastern weekend, we need some teams in the fire cook-off. So I'm looking at Amy out there, and it's like, I went down, where's Carter Jones? He invited me to go down to Sumter, to FES, to that big cook-off thing they have down there. I'm like, there's enough teams that cooked in that thing to keep that up. If we just had half of them teams here, and where this come from is some other associations out across the country, the fire department's cooking teams come there, and that's how they feed the attendees, like here. So for the Southeastern weekend, the idea is that those fire department teams would come together and cook, and then we'd fellowship and eat from around the state. That way we don't just have a bunch of inmates cooking hamburgers. You see how that worked out for us for breakfast this morning. So if you want to eat at the Southeastern Conference, you need to talk to Amy Williamson, all right? So get your teams together, and let's have a big time here that weekend. So that's my plug.
Awesome. That's great.
Will said he's got a team for the eating.
Well, we have Chief Brunacini and Chief Ray joined by Joe Palmer and Will Vanier and Jonathan Jones, the current president and the incoming president of the South Carolina Firefighters Association. So I think that's the future thing, right? So having said that, let me toss it to you, and what's your take? What's your feel from this weekend and some of the comments, the people, the ahas that you've observed? Let's kick it off with that. And I'm pretty sure Chief Brunacini's got a couple of those as well. Who's
Me?
first?
Well, our hopes were, I think, by far surpassed numbers-wise. Will and I were talking. What you learn here is great. The networking is priceless. What we had here last night, you wouldn't get at FDIC in terms of the round table, and it's right here in South Carolina. And we're estimating that last night online we had somewhere in the neighborhood of 400 to 500 people watching, which is tremendous considering we advertised it 3 days. So I'm hoping that you folks that are watching right now are thinking, I want to be there next year. And the conversations that we've had are really weren't anything new to South Carolina. I mean, we've been having those conversations for the past few years. Chief Ray and I were talking. It's really justifying the tactics we've been using for years in a lot of departments. I think what has been, what has been evident is the desire for the different groups to collaboratively work together. And I think that's been evident this weekend. I think it's been successful this weekend. I think we've proved, I used the word this morning at the devotional, synergistically, that we work better and are stronger when we're together. And so thank you all for coming. I think it's been a success. Will?
What I like to see, especially at a conference like this, is called improvement. The number of people in our state, old and young, new, been in the service for a long time, still want to get better. And they come to a place like this to get recharged and go back home and take it back to your department to actually make a difference in your community. And that's what this is important. That's why it's important for all these associations to get together to go back home and make a difference. Because if it doesn't leave this room, it wasn't worth it. It's got to get back home. It's got to get back to your local community. It's got to get back to your local fire department if it's going to be worth anything. So I'm glad to see all these faces, and I hope we see more next year, and we stay involved on as much things that you can be involved in throughout the year. Stay charged up.
It may be blind luck or it may be divine intervention, but we wanted this to be designed to be a thinking conference, an engaging, thoughtful experience. This wasn't a class that was being taught to you. This needed to be dialogue in this room, outside of this room, an engaging, thoughtful process that, like Will is saying, that goes back home with you, and that we keep this doing it different, thinking firefighter mentality alive, because I think that bridging into future, you're on the cusp of something. We're on the cusp of really changing the fire service potentially, I think, maybe nationwide. And they see that a lot more than I do. But I think the reason is because of that continuity that we have. For the first time in a long time that I've been involved with, all of the players in this game are together, whether that's state agencies, associations sitting around this room. We're communicating, we're talking. Now, it's a family, and sometimes brothers and sisters don't get along real well, but we still communicate and have that dialogue. And that's pushing us forward. And that's allowing us to push forward that envelope of what we're thinking and talking about doing this week. Whether it's the tactics, whether it's the instructional work, whether it's the cutting edge of the prevention efforts in manufactured housing. Whatever the case may be, whatever the topics we talked about, it was pushing. And I think that you have to be that infectious disease. You've got to go back and infect those other people that either listen to part of us or that you have a sphere of influence when you get back home. And if we do that, then I think that it's been every bit worth the while of these folks hosting us to come here.
And you look, I was sitting here thinking about just what we've done. If you look at 2013 and think about the quarterlies, think about the conference at the beach, when you pull all this activity that's been going on together, just the most recent little quarterly we had here, that Chief Nick Martin taught about combat ready. It's like you think about that says you got to have that skill set, you got to be able to perform. Now we've got the science. We did the Spartanburg burns, we did kill flashover, we're going to do that again. So we're just keep building on what we've done in the past. It says, and Tim Sindelbeck said it last night. That's a fact. We're not saying anybody or anything was wrong in the past. We're just maybe reorganizing some of it, especially the skills. And I think in South Carolina in the last year, we've had enough of that to get us keep rolling in the right direction. So no pressure on you, Will. But.
No, sir. And I think, well, another thing that I think was important this weekend, and when you start talking to science, is that we come in here and say, do it different, and you realize it ain't that different. It ain't that different than what you've been doing. It's just a whole lot more science backing it up on why we do things. Because there's a lot of techniques that I know you're doing back home right now, and when that comes on the screen and we start talking about it, you blow your chest up and proud of that, and you should be. But just know when we start about doing it different, it's fine-tuning. It's not huge changes.
Well, and you know, the most important thing that I think can be said from this table, knowing that you're fixing to go back home, is follow through. Anything we say at this table today, anything we've said this weekend is meaningless if you don't go home and follow through. Will, you coach a lot of sports. How important is follow through in a golf swing? In a pass?
Just take a look at my swing. And my scores. So,
if you're a church goer, you know what I'm fixing to describe is you have that emotional draw to be different, right? But somewhere between the altar and the door, it's one of my favorite songs, but somewhere between the altar and the door, you lose the follow through. You know, I'm all fired up. When you walk through those doors, you're all fired up from the weekend and all the stuff you've learned, but somewhere between that door and the parking lot, you lose the follow through. Don't lose the follow through. Go home and think differently. Go home, and if you're already thinking differently and acting differently, keep doing that. Infect others with it. I think that's the most important thing. When you leave here today, if you don't have that follow through, then everything we've talked about is kind of pointless.
But you hope the follow through has to do with something that's different. I'm going to argue a little bit here. I think there's something different about what you've done here. Yeah. I think what you've done here will keep you from killing yourself. That's different.
Absolutely.
Because we're still doing that, and we do it a lot of times. Let me say this as an insider. It's stupid. We die of stupid stuff. What you all have done here the last 3 days is smart stuff. That changes that. We're doing that new, different, better, and it'll keep us from killing ourselves. I mean, but put it simply in the process. I mean, this stuff you've done here is smart stuff. That's what the follow-through ought to be on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm with Tim. I don't think you have to suffer a huge personality change for what we're talking about, but is it significant? Absolutely. And I think that's what we're trying to do together. I mean, that's a big deal.
And Chief Brunacini, I just really want this audience to hear your insight, and you just have such a great way to be able to talk. When we're talking about the future, and we're talking about the past, I mean, to get to here and now, before you look forward, you have to respect and understand where you came from. We were sharing a conversation earlier that I think would be good for these folks to hear. The models, the role models, and
I think
who
the
you want to be when you grow up.
And we were laughing about it, saying, you know, it's interesting. You break the oldest guy in the fire service out of the rest home, and you want him to talk about the future. Thank you for that. And we're having a hell of a time at the home, too. So. You know, there's some good-looking babes there. You know what you've done here? Is you got people on the bus. This whole deal is a bus ride. And at least in the short time I've been around, I don't know where the bus is going. If anybody can tell you where the bus is going, listen to them and pay attention to it. But I don't know how much I'd buy into it, because I've heard about a lot of bus rides to places I never got to go, let me say. But we're going to go someplace. Here, you heard it here first. We're going somewhere. I think you all have charted an incredible capability to do that together. That is so unusual in our business. Now, I know a lot of you, and I love coming here. And I need to blame my old friend Carter. When did you do a recruiting error and have me come to South Carolina? See, and it isn't my fault, it's his. Because I came, see. And I've come to South Carolina about 50 times. A lot of places I don't remember going, but I remember coming to South Carolina. So I know you all, but honestly, I don't know you in any detail. Now, how many organizations are here? 4?
7 organizations.
7 organizations. I don't know where you're from. I don't know what organization you're from. I can't tell where you're from. Now, I go to a lot of conferences where there's different organizations. I know who they are. Believe me. You don't need to be there very long, and you'll figure out the Hatfields and the McCoys and all that other junk we go through. But I think that if you want to talk about the future, Vicki, how do we prepare ourselves for that bus ride? How do we create the structure? How do we create the relationship? How do we trust each other? How do we prepare people? How do we review what we do? How do we attract smart people, voila, to somehow network and bring out the best in everybody that's on that bus, because it'll take us to the smartest place. Now, I hate to say it, the fire service is really, really good at bus wrecks. Now, aren't we? How many bus wrecks have you seen?
Too many.
Too many in the process. And I'm not being sarcastic. Well, maybe I'm being sarcastic, but not facetious, let me say. That's a trip between 2 places. Yeah. See, for bosses, for leaders, for managers, for grand poobahs, for the people in this room, how do we go back and figure out in our system, how do you take a bus ride to what's next? Now, clearly, you ought to have a roadmap. You ought to understand the language where you're going. You ought to have interpreters. Today, a lot of the interpreters, Vicki Pritchett is really, really smart, because she is sitting next to somebody who understands the bus ride to the future, probably better than anybody, because she's young. Yeah. Now she's going to Google it in a minute
and tweet
she's going to say, yeah, she's going to Google me, and she's going to say, "You hired him?" I'm just kidding. Yeah. But if we think, we ought to try to figure out where we're going. I don't mean to put that at a disadvantage, but honestly, and I've had a hell of a bus ride. Let me say, I got a long ticket, and I got to ride on that bus a lot longer than most people get to ride on it. Once in a while, I thought I knew where I was going, but most of the time, honestly, I didn't know it was going, because when I looked out the front of the bus, the opportunity is what we saw next. I think what you all have done is you have capitalized on what's next. And you're saying that, Jonathan. When you go home, do what? Do what's next.
That's right.
Will we figure out when we do what's next, what's next?
Yes.
Absolutely. It'll leverage itself into that understanding, in us preparing to do that, and what we want to do is keep doing that better and better. The process. Well, we go some places probably that we shouldn't. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, as long as everybody's on the bus together and you're hanging out, you're doing what you need to be doing, you'll take a little detour, but we'll keep going where? We want to prevent harm, we want to survive, and we want to be nice. And that's pretty straightforward too. I mean, it's not,
Well, you laid out your 3 priorities there, and he's talking about how relevant is he in talking about the future. Tim and I were having this conversation last night, and in his class yesterday, he talked about he's in year 40 of a 50-year journey in incident command. And Tim and I were talking about that from day 1 to year 40, how consistent the message has been. It's still relevant today. So there's some things that are so consistent in our past that in year 50 it will just still be just as relevant. Your message will be just as relevant, and it's players in the game like Chief Brunacini. I'm gonna call my dad out, and those that are still relevant today. Their message has been consistent since day 1. Those are the you hear about the houses built on sand and houses built on the rock. Those are the rocks that you build your house on. Those messages, those consistencies, where there's integrity in the teaching. And that's where we know that when we do wreck the bus, we'll get back on the road and keep going, because we know where the road is.
When we wreck the bus, because you probably don't want your dad and I driving the bus. But what we got, what both of us have, is and let me say this, and I mean it the most, and I mean this in the most affectionate way that I can. We got our kids on the bus with us. There's a lot of generations in here. There's a lot of young people in here. They're on that bus, and I think they're sitting all over the bus. You don't sit in the back of the bus now because you're young. You're probably in the back because you're on B shift. Is the process. That's where they ride.
Licking the windows.
But I think, and certainly your fire service is represented by probably now, in some cases, 3 or 4 generations. That strengthens, it improves the direction, it makes that bus ride a lot smarter and safer, and it just makes more sense, I guess, in the process, just to use that as a metaphor in the process. But let me thank the kids in here for the support that you give to the things that we started, that we got from the people that were ahead of us in the process. There's a line. When you join up, you get in the end of that line. You work yourself through that line. At the end of the line, they got a crypt. Now, I was going to have one in my office with a window in it, but that didn't work out. But it's an interesting continuous process. I mean, that's
well. And when you discuss the future of the fire service, and as guys are coming towards the end of their career, that has to be a tough question to address in your department with this, many associations. Where do I fit in? Am I in the future? And that relevance question has to come up, and you got to think about it, because there's only one way to stay relevant: either you're growing or you're going. And the only way to grow is to keep educating yourself. Because, you talk about Chief Brunacini, you talk about Chief Jones, Chief Anderson sitting right there. Those are not guys that made it and just quit. They continue to grow, continue to grow, continue to grow. So, I mean, that's the key, I think.
Maybe that's one point we've overlooked too quickly this weekend, because I know in several classes, Chief, what you just said about the younger part of it, whether it was in the graphic demonstration that Dan was doing, in the Chief 101, someone made the comment about everybody needs this information. Maybe that's part of the answer of the importance of this, and why we're here in the future of it is that, okay, it's more than just recruit school. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity here to engage everybody in the information that we're talking about.
And everybody's easier to engage in terms of the new generation. How easy have we reached 500 people that couldn't be here? The message may, even if the message is consistently the same, the messenger or the way that you're delivering the message is different. And to think it's impossible to reach, we've always in the Firefighters Association used that number 17,500, and how do we reach all those people? That's becoming easier. I mean, you've got to be willing to change the way you receive the information a little bit, but communicating with the masses and getting the stories out and having the stories told is easier. The question is before you get off the bus, we need to capture what you know and make sure it stays on the bus with us after you get off.
See, and I think there's some new stuff and some old stuff. And there's a blinding flash. Is the kids are the very best at the distribution of information today in an electronic kind of way. I think the older people, though, have come up through a system where you dealt with people in a face-to-face kind of way. I had a table like this in my office that was a little bit smaller than this, and I did my job at that table sitting there talking, just like we are here. Mm-hmm. Is I managed my part of that bus ride by talking to people face to face. I think that we ought to cross-pollinate those two capabilities and a lot of other pieces and parts of it to say that there ought to be a rich, robust conversation on the bus. Now, clearly, are they going to text each other on the bus? Absolutely, and that's the way they communicate. Hallelujah. In the session we had here yesterday, great session. Thank you all who attended it. You taught me a lot. We're talking about communications. Where's my friend? My friend there is writing. He's not looking at me. He's writing. He's looking at a racing form.
He doesn't even know he's your friend.
No, he is. No, indeed he is. No. Tell me about the cell phones from the front to the back. Yeah, hang on a minute. He had an incredible perspective on this.
I just was talking to Jonathan out there a minute ago about cell phones, and the cell phones today and the young people, they can do things on these things that you can't believe. And we've had a terrible time with the radio system in Chester County, just terrible. My guys all using cell phones now. I mean, and I got to thinking about this thing, and if every commander I had on the scene had a cell phone and they can text, and they don't do like the chief and I do, say, will you please go eat dinner with me? They have a shortcut for all that.
That's right. No, absolutely.
And if you put an iPad for the engineer on the truck and the engineer on the IC, everything's written. And you're not saying, well, what'd you say? Jonathan was telling me that his air packs have got Mayday devices on them, so you eliminate radios. But the cell phone is the way these young people communicate. They don't want a notebook or a laptop. It's too heavy. But the younger generation and being able to talk to them, you have got to know that. You've got to talk their language.
When we're on the bus and we're hungry, who's going to figure out where the best restaurant's going to be?
They know where it is.
And they're reading the ratings on the damn thing. No, I don't mean that facetiously. Is when we're on the bus, we're looking for what's next. Now, clearly, I think that there are some. Let me kind of go off here. Keep the mic there. Is I think that there's a difference between being smart and being wise, and I don't think that that's reserved in age categories. I think the longer you're around, you get a little bit more road rash, so it maybe produces a little bit more maybe patient wisdom. I think the kids are impatiently smart. And I hope again, and let me just keep belaboring it, on the bus, that ought to make that bus ride better, shouldn't it? Mm-hmm. As long as you can keep everybody on the bus together.
At least entertaining.
Entertaining, absolutely. And if you want to be in fact, there's some of the entertainment that is not, well. No, but I thought we had a great conversation yesterday in class about that. So I thank you for sharing that with everybody. Chief, thank you very much.
Well, and we've talked about all the new stuff and the new ideas and not throwing the baby out with the bathwater kind of thing. I don't want to give the wrong person the credit for it, but I think it was Kyle Minnick that said at one of our executive committee meetings, we were talking about mass communication, and you got the iPads and the iPods and the iPhones, but you can't ignore eye contact.
Brilliant.
Wow. And that came out of Newberry.
Don't tell anybody that.
Joe, there's a lot of good coming out of it.
Yeah, and I don't even know if you're allowed to do this up here, but I'm going to disagree with Chief Brunacini for just a second.
What?
Yeah, I don't know if you
Bless your heart.
So much for his bus ride.
I got thrown off the bus. But so, and we talk about it a lot, and we talked about it yesterday, and we're talking about it up here, how smart these young kids are coming in. They're the same kids coming in your fire department coming in mine. They ain't that damn smart. What they have the ability to do is get information. Now, before we had Google and iPhones and everything else, the sharpest guy in your department is the guy that you can go to and ask anything, and he had his finger on the information because it was right here. Now, everybody's got it on their cell phone, so they have the ability to get information. So what we have to do is be smart enough to use that. Identify their skills and tie it to our wisdom.
Well, they need to get it from their phone to their hand. And that's what we've got to do. That's the new challenge. That's a new challenge, not a new challenge of, let me say, more experienced people. To say, you've trained your hands. They've trained a lot of different things, but as yet, they have not had the time or the access or whatever you want to say to be very vocational. But we make assumptions about kids. I heard a fire service conversation about they had to do some carpenter kind of thing, and there was a kid that didn't know how to manipulate a hammer. So I asked him, what do you do? He says, we trained him in a hammer. I said, how do you do that? And he said, just fine. I'm thinking, okay, the kid didn't know how to use a hammer. I guess in his life up until then he hadn't used a hammer. Now, he could probably Google a hammer. You know, okay, I said, if you can't use a hammer, train him to use a hammer if a hammer is required in the process.
All right, other end of the spectrum.
Sure.
Okay. And this is the commercial. We'll do the Lumosity commercial. Neuroplasticity, all right? So how on the other end of this game do we get the current leaders to maintain that neuroplasticity, that flexibility enough to be able to accept that other end, to be able to apply that other end, to be able to come to programs and accept new stuff that they have, or be listening to us through the internet because they didn't come here, or maybe they're just not engaged at this point. So how are we going to get that other end of the spectrum? Because the choir's here, but there's a whole lot of people that may not be on the choir.
But you can't take a bus ride with the people who are on the bus want to get on the bus. We're going to take a ride. You want to get on the bus? We're going. Now, can you make stops and have more people get on? Do you recruit more people? See, and I couldn't agree with you more, only I call it cyclosclerosis,
Sure.
which is hardening of the head in the process. But it's the same thing. No, you're right. Yeah,
We were having the conversation this morning, and a lot of people were surprised to understand that, you know, there's no fire chief requirement. I mean, it's a popularity contest in many communities, and that's just traditionally the way it's been. And I don't know that we're unique in that, but it was surprising a number of individuals that with the lack of that, this individual is the leader, and what are we affecting that's below? Now, I don't know that that's the norm. That may be the exception. I don't want to characterize it. But if we're going to make this bus, we're wearing out the analogy, go down the road, do some of the people that need their tickets punched need to get off at the next stop?
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. The future, I don't know.
yeah, I know. This is an art. There's some science to it, but there's a lot of art in bus management, isn't there? Yeah. See, maybe it'd do a little tour for the people whose heads are a little bit hard. I mean, if you want to get them on the bus, be nice to them, and that's
It's hard to talk about. It's easy to say we're going to hire a teen and train them, but it's not easy. It's uncomfortable. The seat gets a little hot.
That's right. No, that's right.
To talk about that other end of the spectrum, who may or may not be the leaders that are just kind of there, and we know them. I mean, and maybe we look at them in the mirror sometimes too, but it just.
But we're here.
Yeah.
You guys did this. You transmitted it out to the world. Hallelujah. We ought to celebrate that in the process. I don't know if the hardheads weren't watching it. Shame on them. It didn't stop you from doing it because they're not watching it. Hallelujah. And again, I salute you for that.
Well, and
keep doing it.
We're not the only occupation having this conversation, and we're not the first generation to have it either. The bus has been on the road a long time.
What recruits people? One of the many things that recruits people is that they watch people on the bus and they say they're having a good time. Right. I don't know about anybody else, but I had a great time here the last 3 or 4 days. Thank you. It's a hell of a lot more fun than being at the home. So for any older people, you ought to show up here. They feed you really good.
Talk a little bit.
I've never seen so damn many sandwiches in my life. Than what I saw. I'm sorry, Beck.
No. That just made, and talking about that and thinking about that, it made me think about the role that the South Carolina Fire Academy can play in the future. And I know that you have a lot of new programs that are on the horizon. The online program is up and running, and you're continuing to improve that on a daily basis. But talk about some of those opportunities that are available and are about to be available for South Carolina's fire service.
Well, and that's where I think that the Fire Academy's glad to be part of this journey, this bus ride, whatever we want to call it. But now that we have the dialogue going on in the bus is going forward. Sometimes the windshield gets a little foggy. But the key is like certification. Right now we got Firefighter 1, Firefighter 2, Fire Officer 1, Fire. We're going to have other certification levels. We're going to have that. I just feel comfortable that we're going to have it. And that conversation we've been having to get us there is part of it that says we understand, will we tweak it? Will we change it? Did we take a little wrong turn? And that's the value that we have now with everybody on the bus. Because there's some of you that have been down this road before that'll say, don't turn there, son. Okay. Or, hey, did we run over something in the road? Yeah, it was one of those hard heads. But that for certification, how we deliver training. What we did in Orangeburg County is not what's going to come out in the end, but it is going to empower you more to deliver training that you get credit for. Will we tweak that down from 5 modules to 3 modules? I hope so. May it be 2? May it be back to 5? That's the conversation we're having. It said, how'd that work over here? It worked good, but it might not work over here. Well, this isn't for everybody. City of Columbia doesn't need that. Why? Because they got a very well-oiled process that works. But for Edgefield County, they need modules. They need to be able to take something online and then go test it. What'll wreck the bus is if the hard heads become the fact that says we're not going to engage. We're not going to get, you don't have to be on the bus, but tell us, wave a sign that says wrong direction. And I think, and at the national level, and we've got some of those folks coming in here to talk about this, it says if you want to certify something below Firefighter 1, that's just like, we're going to take you out and you're really getting thrown off the bus. It's like, but wait, that system's been in place since '74 and it needs some tweaking. Well, South Carolina, we're the authority having jurisdiction to tweak that. There is also NFPA 1000. Have you read that lately? It gives us the authority to make some changes.
Whereas Chief Varner was in here a while ago, and this kind of goes back to the NFPA we were talking about up here last night. This is a living, breathing animal. And I think some of the mistakes we've made in the past is we assumed that it was stagnant. It was something that we could create and put on a shelf and pull off when we need it. And that's a fallacy. The reality of it is whether it's the training side of it or the technology side of it, it's a living, breathing thing, and that everybody just has to accept that it's a change, and we have to be part of that. And the training modules, those courses, I think is a great example of that. And I think finally we're coming around to realizing that you need to have that flexibility.
And in this facility, look at this. What we've learned here this weekend, we know we need cameras that drop down over here. We need to be able to stream this with videos. We need to be able to do this with microphones. Our job now is to know that and to follow through. We'll go work through procurement. We'll go get that stuff done. Rick's up there going, oh my God, that's another assignment. We'll get better. There's those pieces that we got to tweak, because why? We won't all fit in here next year, I hope. So we got to be able to say somebody's got to watch somewhere else. But we also got to get the master plan updated that says, hey, we're going to build a new auditorium right out here at the end of the street, because there's 25 acres of land over here that the guy that owns the back half wants to do some horse trading. Well, it's like, well, but if you hear that now and you leave and say, he said we was going to build an auditorium out here for $10 million. It's like, where'd you get that at? And I was like, that's the vision that we need to get, that we need to share. And if it says, no, you know what, it needs to be across the street because you own 25 acres over there. Okay, I didn't think about that. Or we don't want to cross the road because we can't walk straight. And some people ride the bus, we get T-boned by a dump truck. But those are the kind of things that's going on here, though, that I think's good, that synergy will keep us going. And I feel like that there is a good team to make all those things happen.
There has to be some questions. Any questions from this group? Anybody have anything they'd like to toss out there as a topic? Or
all right, if they don't come up with one, I'll get one.
All right.
Somebody raise your hand. What was something that you got that was unexpected that you may have gotten this weekend, something that really sparked a fire? What was the one thing you heard or something that was outstanding?
Oh, Chief Varner, stand by.
That may not have been answered. That's what he's going to say, but what do you think, Chief?
First of all, I think the weekend has been outstanding. And until about 2 years ago, I had never been here. And I've been here about four times now. And I'm impressed every time I come. I'm impressed with the people. I'm impressed with the things that you're doing, the things you've done, and the forethought that went into establishing this to what it is today. And certainly, as Shane describes, the ability to grow in the future. But the real comment I was going to make is back to the NFPA, is I just want to reiterate what I said last night. All of the NFPA standards are minimum standards. You can choose to exceed those to whatever degree you wish to exceed them. You're the authority having jurisdiction. You can require that. When you get all the agreement, you can require that for the state of North Carolina that's over and above whatever 1001 or any other NFPA standard says. I imagine that there are people that buy NFPA 1971 compliant turnout gear that exceed the requirements of that with their order, because that's what they determined that they needed in their organization. They do it every day. There's nothing that holds you back there.
That's an excellent, you're right on target. And I'll tell you how we fell trapped to that same thing here in state is because, and some of these folks have been around longer than I can attest, with our basic firefighter training program, we fell into that same trap. We began to accept what was intended to be the minimum as the end, the max. And that was wrong. And your point is exactly on target, and we mirrored that, unfortunately, in our state. And I think what he's doing a good job now of is getting us away from that concept, is realizing that there's more to life just than what that one line, what that one JPR says.
Well, and I know the discussion is going to be happening about NFPA 1001. We know the answer already, or at least we think we do. We don't have to wait for them to change for us to start making change. I mean, it's not like NFPA 1001 has to give us permission to start talking about fire dynamics.
The standards police are en route. They're behind the bus going, pull to the right.
I mean, who's got to give you permission to go home and talk about this?
That's what it is. Well, if you're on the when you take the trip to the NFPA, it's going to be a long bus ride. No, like Bruce, I've hung out with the NFPA for a while. And I don't mean it critically, I just mean it descriptively. Just get patient if you're going to deal with the NFPA, because it is like pushing a gigantic marshmallow. But I'm with you. Is somebody going to tell you not to do response to the testing and the information that we know?
Well, and no, the other thing...
Shame on you if you let them do that, absolutely.
The other thing that we have in the past let bind us, constrain us, however you want to say it, is the manual itself. We've oftentimes accepted the manual as the standard. Yeah. Y'all, you've heard me use this analogy before. I've been out and listened to the things that get put in the manual debated, and my goodness, it's who agrees with 80% versus 60%. There's the science behind that. You know? Yeah. And you know, we have the ability now, and Rick's back there going, yep, in the Essential 6, we're going to be able to make it say what we want it to say. We'll still meet the standard, but we're going to be able to teach what we know needs to be taught.
And the good thing is that NFPA knows that. They're being cooperative, and IFSTA knows that, and they're being cooperative and letting us part of their processes. And so, again, that's back to that. We'll all play nice together.
That's right.
Okay, I'm back here, and it's funny. I'll come back. I'll make my way back up there. But as we think about the future, and you're thinking about what you can do and how to go home and follow through, it made me think about a story that Chief Sindelback has shared. And I've come back here, and he's like, "Oh, what? Here she comes!" And I'm like, "Just be ready." He's like, "Okay." But you talk about, Chief, the checklist, and as a fire service leader, and you're about to make a decision, asking yourself a question and having 2 columns. Can you share that? Because that really resonated with me, and I think that it would be a very helpful tool for all of these people as they leave here and go home and try to do it different.
You did put me on the spot. I guess I would ask just real quickly everybody to take out a piece of paper and draw a T on it. If you don't have a piece of paper, just imagine you got one in front of you, or a bar napkin. That's probably more appropriate. You're not going to put any number on it. You're not going to ask for a number. What I want you to do is, on that napkin, imagine that there's a T. On the left side of that line, I want you to think about your name, or just put firefighter on the left side of that line. On the right side of that line, I want you to put Mrs. Smith, Miss Jones, Miss Rodriguez, whoever your customer might be. When you go back and a decision is being discussed in the fire department, whether it is a financial decision, a decision to do training, you're going to purchase something for your organization, whatever be the case, whenever you have to make a decision or somebody asks you to make a decision, take that bar napkin, spin it around, and push it back to the person asking to make that purchase. And say, put a check on either side of the line. Who's going to be the beneficiary of the decision that I make, the financial outlay that I make? If Mrs. Smith is not the beneficiary of that decision, why are you making that decision? And I think that's where we've gone adrift, is we're putting too many checks on our side of the line. We need to start putting more checks on Mrs. Smith's side. Because if you think about the reciprocal process that occurs, typically sometime in November, is Mrs. Smith votes for us. Mrs. Smith makes sure we have the financial backing. Mrs. Smith makes sure that we have the apparatus. The recruitment and retention opportunities are all based on Mrs. Smith. So what we've got to do is focus on that line and make sure her checks far exceed ours, and in November she'll make sure we get the checks back. So it's definitely a reciprocal process.
Isn't that a neat little tip? And it just kind of fit in there. And I'm making my way back right up here, I believe.
I think we got two pretty good bus drivers sitting up there.
Which two? I see this going on. Anyone else? New topic? Question? Comment? Anyone at the table with something that we left undiscussed?
Well, I think that when I look out at the room here and say there's some policymakers in here, there's some fire chiefs that can go back and say, hey, we want to do what? We want to be able, from the time we hit the air brake until the time we can deliver water, isolate a door, whatever that task is in that command mode, command to attack, do what we do in that strategy, tactic, and task. The fire chief can go say those things. Those of you that are younger that may not make the policy but may pull the line have got to change some maybe of our company drills that says we got to be proficient at pulling that line. And I think some of those things is where we've just got to hone our skills to, that says, how proficient are you? If we can put our turnout gear on in 60 seconds and an SCBA on in 60 seconds, can we get a line delivered and water flowing in 60 seconds? NFPA 1710 and 1720 gives us that scene time to deploy. It's like, are we proficient at that? There's those big policy decisions that we can make that changes our stuff, like I wanted to make as the fire chief. I wanted to be able to say, I do not want you in, and I've been to a few fires, thank you all for letting me go to those fires with you, that says we walk into this building without an air pack on, even as an investigator. I was in there digging around trying to find a smoke alarm, thinking, I've read the UL study on particulates and overhaul, so why am I in here without my air pack? But my air pack costs $6,000. It's got all these bells and whistles on it, and it was not designed for me to just go walk around after the fire's out and dig out a smoke alarm. Well, it is. You could do that. I can, but there's not the one size fits all. We've got to adapt, and we all got to play our roles in doing that. How do we do that? That's going to take all of us. 2 people can't do it. 5 associations can't do it. It's going to take 500 fire departments and 17,500 of us to get that fixed. Because somebody's got to hear that and say, all right, I'm the chief, and our policy now is we will not go interior until we have 2 lines at the threshold we make entry. What's that mean? That's 2 in, 2 out. We will not go in, and I watch fires all the time that says we're interior, and that's okay, but there's no line at the door. I watch us here that says when we're inside, why aren't we down at that doorway monitoring the airflow? If you're holding a hose line, you know whether they're advancing or whether they're flowing water or whether they're wanting to back out. But what's our backup team? Our backup team standing out there going, oh God, I had to be backup. That's the mindset we got to take change to, but it's going to take us all, and that's where the policy is, the practice is. We got to take our knowledge and our skills and put those together, and it's a challenge. But when you do it, like our friends from Hartsville that's here, that they got a firefighter they showed me pictures. He's sprinkling his house. He's building a new house. He's got a sprinkler contractor, and they're putting in sprinklers. They passed an ordinance to they'll waive your building permit fee. We got to figure out how to get that information and share it with everybody else. That's our role as I look at our young communicators down here. Tweet that. And they're like, well, you can't. We don't have a policy at LLR for social media. Okay, get a bulletin. I know what to do. Send it to Jason Pope. he'll tweet it. So we're making progress and we're doing good, but if you go back and say, hey, we got this policy that we don't operate in Beaufort County without an air pack during overhaul. Okay, share it with us so we see how you're doing it. Somebody's going to say, you can't do that. And it's like, yeah, we wear a Tyvek suit when it's 100. Those are the little things we got to tweak in the laboratory we have here. And I don't know any state in this country that has a laboratory like we do here in South Carolina. From the fire academy to your fire department, to the fire marshal's office, to the associations, we got an opportunity to test it and say, that worked good. Or, that was a dirt road. Get back to the interstate. Sorry, I got me wound up.
That's good.
No more coffee. I'll get a Mountain Dew for lunch.
Well, and I think what you're saying, Shane, is you've said before, we constantly figure out on that road where the next stop is. I mean, and when we get to that stop, we figure out where the next stop is. Our responsibility, though, is as we figure all that out, we need to map it so that others know the road. Because not everybody's going to have access to the answers the way you're describing. And so when you figure it out in your department and it's working, it may not work the same way in Clarendon County as it does in North Charleston. It's probably not. We don't have the same resources. But he found a way to the next stop that I didn't know about. And I'm at least better off knowing his way. And even if I have to, blaze my own trail part of the way, at least I know he got there. And there may be a way for me. But your responsibility is when you figure it out, share it. Share it. We need to be, I think, as the fire academy, as the fire marshal's office, years ago, somebody wise by the name of Richard Mincy called the fire marshal's office in South Carolina the fire focal point. The place you look to, right? That's a word, that's a term you ain't heard in a long time. It's the place you look to when you don't know where to look. That's what it needs to be.
And that word is still in the fire marshal's job description position to this day. It's still in there. When it was updated, when I became the fire marshal, it's like Carter Jones gave me the document, and it still says it in the job description that I operate under today. But it's here now. Mm-hmm. That's what this is. We have that here. And it's not just one. It's that what's going on right now is it.
Well, and I think the success of the future is going to be directly related to the number of members in any association that are actively engaged. Mm-hmm. You have to be part of the process. For a long time, it seems like the whole fire service, a small number of people were doing most of the decision making and then fault by 80%. Well, if you're involved on the front end, that's how we make change. Because I don't want to sit back and let somebody dictate what I'm going to do either. But if I can get buy-in, I'm all in. And that's where we got to focus. We have focused for a long time. Every president from probably the time that Carter was president until right now is focused on communication. How do I communicate to all of my members? And we've done mail outs and we're focusing on social media, email, all those things. Now the question is, how do I get them engaged? I can get information to them. How do I bring them in? And so I think that's where we're at. And if we want to be successful with what we're talking about here and really make change and continue to be a leader in the nation as South Carolina Fire Service, it's going to be how many people are engaged.
And on that note, Will, let me toss this out to you as a group. How are you managing, as respected fire service leaders from South Carolina and Phoenix, Arizona, how the volume of information, there's only 24 hours in a day, from emails to text messages to just all of it, and we've talked about so many opportunities. How do you personally prioritize and manage, time management type thing? Because I think you all probably have a system, and I think it might be beneficial as we're thinking about it to learn from one another kind of thing. I'm betting there might be some. What do you think?
Well, and yeah, there's only so much information you can process, and I hate to say it like this, but what I do is I let other people sort it out for me. And so, yes, there are things that I read or different publications or email blasts that I'm a part of. And y'all are the same way. Y'all get email blasts for things that you don't even look at. You know, because you've seen it and it didn't say anything, or you read it once and it wasn't that good. But there's certain email blasts that every time I get it, I read it. And that may direct me somewhere. But you're right. And we talked about it yesterday as far as incident command. We are in the age now that you need somebody that manages information. And it's coming to the point that it's going to be in the command post managing all this technology that's giving us data and making something out of it. But I guess for me personally, there's certain publications that I always read, and there's certain people I follow on Facebook and Twitter. And that doesn't give me all the information, but Joe's a good one to follow as far as emails and all that. He puts some information out there.
Along with that command post observation, when you make an assignment out of that command post, you are responsible for managing the details of that assignment. In other words, I'm delegating the details to you. Don't try to delegate up and try to get me to do the details, because I'll just bounce it right back to you. It's interesting. Now, I think that we are headed toward increasing amounts of information that, as that event evolves, that we talked about yesterday. But I think we do that in a day-to-day sense. In other words, in every assignment, from a firefighter up to a division commander, you're responsible for the details, and that responsibility requires that you not only manage those details, but connect those details to wherever and whoever has to somehow help you or be connected to that effectively. I think that's in the organization, that becomes, I think, an ethic that creates a lot more order and control and opportunity too. Because what you've done is empower those people to simply, I'm repeating myself, manage the details of that assignment. I mean, that's one piece of it, though. A little one, I guess.
Chief Jones, you're a great example of one who has a good balance. Talk a little bit about that from a standpoint, and it plays into the theme for the conference. Your leaders, it shows in everything you do. And I think you probably have some very, you make that choice. You made that choice. But how do you frame that from a standpoint of balance in life?
You have to, whether it's managing information, managing time, whatever it is you're managing, you have to be intentional about it. It doesn't happen. It doesn't just happen. You have to be intentional about it. You know, I think it's priorities. You get to choose and set your priorities. Now, when you set your priorities, it's going to limit your ability to do the things that aren't the highest priorities on your list. You know, Miss Vicki and I were talking recently, and I told her, I said, I have a defining line that I do not cross. I don't. Because, you know, we're serving Mrs. Smith, but I got 130 people that can hold the nozzle. I got 130 people in my department that can hold Mrs. Smith's hand, but there better not be anybody else that holds my wife's hand. When my daughter's sick, ain't nobody else does that. That's me. That's the line I don't cross. So that's it.
And that's good that it is intentional. You saying that it's intentional because you make those decisions.
Yeah.
In family, in the fire station, that says, you know, I made a decision. With those decisions, there's consequences. Mm-hmm. And that's where on our bus ride, back to our bus ride here, that we all got to help each other to say, you know, again, back to that, don't turn there, go faster, stop, don't run over that. Because we got enough eclectic group of people here to be able to say, we've done that before. So we just got to keep up that dialogue.
But the bus can go by your house so you can hold her hand.
You can't.
It works. If somebody doesn't want to get on the bus today, and they send you a message, you'll send the bus back by to pick them up. I mean, bus ride has a lot of capability in it, truly. And a lot of it, see, I think something that goes with balance is hygiene. And I mean that in the broadest sense. It was one of the ethics of that bus trip is it ought to increase everybody's health. And I mean that in the broadest way. Some literally, a lot of the theme that you've developed, Jonathan, has to do with hygiene, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. It's a boss's responsibility to care for the people who work for them. And that's an ethic that we ought to treasure in the process. I mean,
that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
It really is. And I think as we come to the conclusion of this kitchen table session, I'm struck by a quote from W. Edwards Deming, joy in work, joy in learning. You understand that. It's part of who you are. You're blessed in that if you're in this room, you're somehow attached to South Carolina's Fire Service. You made that choice. You made that intentional decision. And the citizens of South Carolina are better as a result of that. And what you do every day does make a difference. And how you incorporate and process what you've learned while here this weekend or thinking into the future if you attend Spartanburg Burns or you go to the beach in June or you're at the Southeastern Fire School, each and every time you push yourself to learn, then you can go back to that daily work with a little more joy in your heart. And that shows as you look out across this room. And it has been a special weekend. My hats are off to everyone who had this vision. That took leadership. We can do it. It's a little different, but we can do this. And look at the reward. Talk about the intentional decision and consequence. There's also the opportunity for reward because of those intentional decisions. And I think that you see examples of that all around you as well. And I just think you're really lucky to be right here, right now, knowing what you know, the challenge to follow through, go home. See Chief Sarnicki back there on the back row. From a standpoint of the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation, I don't know that there's any state that we can go into with the team and not be proud. We pull on the campus and we see everyone goes home. You have really done a good job of making it part of every day, learning from those tragedies to prevent future incidents, being a safe firefighter. I think you can do this. I think you're going to do great. And I think we'll keep doing more of this to keep that kitchen table. There's a challenge. Go home and have one of these kitchen table talks in your fire department. Intentionally create the opportunity. And if you don't have a kitchen table, have a bay talk. Or what? On the back step. Tailboard. There you go. Everybody has that place. Share what you learned this weekend. Now, I know all these people got the memo about those door prizes
Yes,
because
ma'am.
they're still here.
You got it. They didn't hang around to hear
it's like,
Shane and I, that's for sure.
I don't think that's true. I think they did indeed hang around to hear this. But I do believe we're ready for...
Yep. We're going to be handing out now some tickets. Folks are going to be coming around the front, and we want to hand out tickets. And while they're doing that, we're going to be sending you an email after this program is over with. And we want you to take a look at that email because we need your feedback on evaluating this program. We're going to ask some very different questions in that email that affects what we do with this next year, how we better do this next year, how we serve you, but we also want to have information from you about how this is affecting you at home. Because I think asking that question is probably going to give us a better opportunity of being able to shape this thing as we go forward. So if you would please, the ladies are coming around. Keep your seats for a moment, just a moment of some organization. Marcia, the folks in the middle aisle are handing out the Academy evaluation form. Take a moment if you would and complete that, please.
My pleasure.
Ladies on the end, Sheila and these ladies down here in red are handing out the tickets. Make sure you get a door prize. We do have some very nice door prizes to give out.
What a time we had.
Yep.
Still going on.
From Vicky. Miss Vicky.
Into the mic.
He needs the microphone. I'm sorry. Make sure it's still on.
Careful, careful.
Watch yourself.
Careful, careful.
Make sure it's on.
Who's in charge of safety?
It was
Rick,
mentioned
Rick
this
may have
morning.
turned us off.
Yeah, who's in charge of safety?
Let me have your attention for a second. Listen up. You can fill those things out quietly. We got another comment down here. Thank you very much. A few more minutes.
It was mentioned this morning in Fire Chief 101 that there's a problem with some of the fire chiefs still being hard-headed and not getting everything to their members. And it was mentioned in Chief Palmer's office to me this past last year. And I think that's one of the main problems that we have in the state, that our fire chiefs, some of them still want to be hard-headed and they're not getting all information out to all their members. That's one thing we need to focus on, to getting those people to let everybody know to be here, and they need to be here and be involved in this.
Yes, sir.
Amen.
Yeah, no doubt. I think that's one of the strengths of having all of the associations present and part of it, too. Thank you, Chief. Good comment.
Anyone else? Well, they're still up here. This is great. We can continue the dialogue if there's any other comments or questions. Anyone? She said she was ready to sing karaoke. Oh, it's a cute bucket. Uh-huh.
Tickets back. Sheila's still handing some out. Patty, you're good back there? Do I have the stubs? If you do not have a red ticket, raise your hand so these ladies can see you and come to you. If you do not have a ticket, going once, going twice. Sheila, I see Sheila pointing. If you're a Baptist on Sunday morning and sitting in the back, that's why you don't get a ticket then, right? No, just kidding. Looking for a thumbs up from you, Sheila, so we'll know we're good. So all of the stubs are in the bucket. All right. You heard me tell you earlier, too, about the email survey that I'm going to send out to you. We're also going to enter you in a prize. If you return that to us, the prize for that, everybody that responds, your name's going in a hat, and we're going to give away a Kindle Fire or something or whatever. So a little incentive to reply back to that for a Kindle prize as well for that reply. Everybody in there now? Email. He's not online. Rick, are you still up online? Very good. Rick's giving me the thumbs up. So we had a text question here about how can folks at home that are watching this give feedback and give information. Send us an email, info@scfirefighters.org. We'll get it to you. And any of our individuals that have names, Joe at SC Firefighters comes to me. You can send it to us. If you've got our social media, Facebook and our Twitter account, send it to us that way as well. Is that good, Rick? I like it. Thank you. Good question. All right, ready for our first number. For a lantern, an Alpine lantern, 151-200, 151-200, 200. Going once, 200. It's got to be in the room. Somebody's got to have it. Okie dokie then. 151, 200. Going. Moving to the next one. 151, 205. 205. 205. Going once, going twice. Gone. Next one. 151, 077. 151, 077. Better raise your hand high. There he is. One of y'all could, she could take that up there too. Take that. We're trying to get it to you. Sorry. Another lantern, 151, 164. 164. Eddie, come on front. They want you. 164. Nope, Eddie didn't get 164. 164 over here. Come on down. The other lantern coming right there. Oh yeah, this is a really neat thing. You heard Jonathan maybe talk about yesterday the company that we're partnering with, Diets for Life. Well, they're offering a free program to this recipient for the station, not just you as an individual, up to 20 firefighters. So it's a pretty neat thing from Diets for Life. The ticket we've got here is 151, 206. 206, 206. Going once, going twice, gone. Pulling another one. 151, 161. 151, 161. 161. Where are all these people at and how do we get numbers in here if everybody in here's got a ticket? 161. Gone. 169. 151, 169. Okay, this is fun. 169. All right, here we go. Raise your hand if you want something. 151, 140. 140. I hear a ooh. 140. He's been drinking this morning already. 151, 140. Gone.
You do understand we're not putting it back in for the iPad. So
this is it. 151, 094. 094. I smell a rat in our system here. I smell a rat. What's the deal? Okay. All right. 151, 055. 05. Thank you, sir. God bless you. That's his coming up there. That's his coming up there. I'm just going to keep on drawing. You ain't got a number. I got it. And for an association travel mug, 151, 210, 210, 210, 210. Charlie's coming up front. There you go. That's Charlie right there. Swap with you. Very good. We have here the bearer of this will have a free registration for Southeastern Fire School. This is an $80 value for the certificate holder. The number for this is 151, 195, 195, 195. Going once, going twice, moving along. 195, 176. 176. I hear a hey. Greg got it. Hand it right there to Greg. All right. And our next number, 268. 151, 268. 26. Bingo. Come on up front, my friend. For another gift certificate for Southeastern. Thank you, sir. Next number, 064. 064. 064. Bingo. Come on up. This is for a Fire Academy golf t-shirt. Bearer of that, 1064. Thank you. Sign right here. Come here. Next ticket, 119. 119. Come on up. Another golf shirt from the Academy. Thank you, sir. Bag with goodies in tow, 125. 125. 125. Fun stuff. Here we go. 124. That's convenient. 124. So much for that. (056). 056. Raise your hand, wave at us. 056. Come down here. He's asleep. Thank you for waking up. That's his. Thank you for waking up to claim your prize. Another bag with contents, 127. 127. 127, 127, moving on. 271. 271. 271. Really? Okay. 237. 237. 23. Come on, Keith. He was asleep too. Thank you for waking him up. Gentleman coming down the aisle. Back to 237 again. 237. 167. 167. This is really fun. I tell you what, this is amazing. The science behind how we put tickets in a bucket. 043. 043. 151-043. Come on down, Scott. God bless you. (173) 173. Thank you, Diane. Miss Diane. 102, 151, 102, 102. Bingo, right over here. Thank you. Come on down. ISTA Fundamentals of Firefighting Skills to 185, 185, 185. Wave at us if you got it. Now you're coming. Is that you? See somebody coming down front. 185. Got it. All right, I think that means he's got it. There we go. All right. Take the book, boss man, and sign with her. Vehicle Extrication Manual, again from ISTA. 174. 174. Wave at us. 174. Rick. Next book, Fire Investigation, 079, 079, 079, going once, going twice, moving along. 181, 181, 181, if you're not waving, I'm moving. I heard a woo, somebody better point or wave. 181, coming down the aisle. Hazmat Managing the Incident, 241, 241, 241. Up, right here. Thanks, Steve. How appropriate is this? You got the hazmat book. 139, 139, 139. Nobody moving, moving on. 139. 049, 049. Is that a wave right there? He jumped up. That's him, 049. Thank you. (095), 095, 95 waving. Nobody moving on 95. Moving on. 159, 159, 159. 093, 093. We can just dump out half of these out of the bucket and we'll still be safe. Make sure somebody puts on their agenda to improve the ticket draw next year. 039, 039, 39, 39, 39, going once, going twice, moving along. We increased the prizes. 053, we're sweetening the pot. 053, 50, bingo. Thank you. 202, 202, 202. I saw somebody jump up, but I guess not. 202, moving on. 024, 024, 024. Wave at us if you're getting 024. Nope, moving on, thank you. 275, 275, back in the corner, thank you. 223, 223, 223. Nobody moving? Moving on. 134, 134, 134, 134. Moving on. 112, 112. 112, nobody moving, nobody pointing their fingers. All right, there we go, moving on. 209, 209. Moving on. 17, 017, 017. Is nobody surprised that we didn't have that number in the room? 234, 234, there's a shocker. 242. Oh, somebody hollered ho over in the corner. Very good. This is pretty good for this weekend. I'll pick on the folks here. How many of you had your cell phone battery go dead when you're sitting in here? Okay, well, this one will be a good one for you. You might want to get this one. This is one of those portable miniature power packs for your portable devices. Let's see if we can find 126. 126. 126. There's another shocker. Boy, I'm really... 051. Hey, there you are, sir. 051. Thank you very much. Wireless headset for your laptop and or other portable devices, 235, 235, 235, 235, moving through it.
These can also be used as house arrest calls.
They can use whatever that is. 074, 074, 074, 74. 244, 244. Whoa, right here, come up front. Thank you, sir. Right along. 030, 30, 3030.
Chief Agee, I'm rooting for you to win something electronic.
30, 030. Nope, moving on. 149, 149, 149, 149. Bingo! Right there, all right.
Fitbit wireless wristband.
Your activity tracker for Fit Team folks will love this one. Your activity tracker when you wear on your wristband, the electronic thing. 208, 208, 208, 208, 208's gone. 037, 037, 037. Don't worry, there's only 500 more in the bucket. 251, 251, 251, 251, 251. 046, 046. Thank you, sir. You don't know how happy we are that you have that number. iPod Nano to 111, 111, 111. I see a gentleman standing in the audience. Perfect. Thank you, sir. Is this the last one? Okay. Here they grew in size. This is the iPad Mini that we're giving away. So yeah, pull your numbers out. What's the chances of nobody having this number? Pretty good. 193, 193, 193. What a shocker. There we go.
Rick's jumping up and down.
Rick, do you have it really?
No.
Okay, got it. We were really hoping 143. Hey, back in the back. Thank you, sir.
Again, thank you for coming out this weekend. I think the biggest compliment that you can pay us and all the associations that were involved is that you go home, you get all of this stuff that we've done in the big room's been recorded. You go home and you get people to watch it, and you bring some back with you next year. That's the biggest compliment you can pay. Pass your evaluation forms to the center, please. We'll pick them up. Drive safely. God bless.